I'm Soong-Chan Rah. I currently teach at North Park Theological Seminary. I'm on the faculty there. Been there for about 3 years, and prior to that I was a pastor in Cambridge, Boston for 15 years. This is my first Cornerstone. I think Cornerstone is really interesting in that most of these other festivals have this one stage where, everything happens in that one stage. So you have kind of a limited number of acts. Here it's really fascinating. You have stages all over the place. You have these independent groups, just these impromptu stages. That's really interesting to me that, you can find a little bit of everything in this kind of gathering. Part of what's happening now with a much more global economy, global communication, is that we have the possibility of hearing and learning from each other. We have the possibility of learning from the African church, the Asian church, the Latin American church. But even here in the U.S., the larger white evangelical church can learn from the African American church, can learn from the immigrant church. That's what's great about what's happening in America right now and in the world. A big part of that for me is the willingness to engage with those that are different from us and have different experiences from us, and what can they teach us rather than we have something to teach them. I think any movement can really get caught up in itself. All of us can be that way. That's just human nature for us to be so focused on one thing that we can't hear the other voices that are coming in. And no matter how progressive we think we are, we're still going to hear these voices from a particular angle. And I think that's where any kind of community, any kind of movement, whether it's emerging or whether it's reformed or evangelical, there is the danger of being put into this particular category and not being able to hear any other voice outside of that. If you go down the list of just very basic things like the characteristic of Yahweh, who is Jesus, the difference of the disparity is usually in the ecclesiology or how church life is lived out between, let's say, the larger white evangelical community and the traditional black churches. So when you look at the foundational theology, you're going to find some similarities. In terms of how that theology is applied practically, you're going to find some pretty significant differences between the white church and the black church and other communities as well. So if we look at it and say, yeah, these are evangelicals in the theological sense, but at the same time have a different application. The big issue is not the hegemony of one group saying we are more powerful, therefore we should dictate the terms of this conversation, versus we need to hear from these communities that we have marginalized in the past, and this kind of power dynamic shouldn't exist. Therefore, let's enter and come into the table together because we have a lot more in common than we realize. Power gets talked about less by those who have it, because you don't want to deal with the reality of power because you already have it. So part of the problem is, even though this huge economic, ecclesiological power resides in the United States, people don't want to talk about it. And I would say let's just be honest about it. Mm-hmm. We in the West have a tremendous amount of economic, ecclesiological, even political, military power that we're connected with in some way. And it's not that we're coming into this place and saying, oh, we don't have any power, because that would be a flat-out lie, or we don't want to talk about power because that's disingenuous. But saying, all right, there is a power dynamic at work. How can we work through that? How can we deal with that? How can we work in such a way that there's genuine cooperation while recognizing the reality of that power dynamic? That's the major problem, I think. I think because we have this high comfort culture, and that reduces us to even more kind of specialization. So, we've got multiple layers in which we've got to deal with this. How do we deal with this as a larger evangelical community? How do we deal with this as a larger Christian and larger global Christian community? Because the natural proclivity for fallen human beings is to gravitate towards what's comfortable in that society. And what's comfortable for us in American society is to have these niche groups and to hang out with people that look exactly and talk exactly and think exactly like us. But part of growth is to encounter and connect and deal and interact and learn from people that are different from us. So, and I'm putting it in the kind of simplistic terms of here are people who suffer and here are people who celebrate. These are taken out of Walter Brueggemann's work, but it's not that they're at odds with one another. It's more that they complete the picture of who Jesus is. They complete the picture of our understanding of God. So if there is a person that comes from a celebratory model of white evangelicalism, well, let's interact with those who are suffering. Not to say, I've got something to give to you, but also I've got something that I need to learn from you as well. These workshops have been great. I've really enjoyed the dialogue. Some friends of mine who are also presenting here, we've been able to have some good conversation. I'm really appreciative that, someone like me, just someone who's here for the first time, was invited to do a workshop. my friend Richard Twist and Gabriel Salguero, folks who have never been here before, but now have an opportunity to present from the Native perspective, Latino perspective, from the Asian American perspective. I think that just can't help but add to the richness of what's going on here. So I have found some great dialogue partners here and the opportunity to engage in some great conversation with folks here at Cornerstone.